Hey everybody, how's it going? This is John Breeden. It is February 9th, 2020. It is the Busch Clash review show. I do apologize up top. I am a bit hoarse. Not feeling the best today, but there was no way I was going to go today without doing a video on this Busch Clash at Daytona. I don't even know what to say. It was an absolutely crazy race. Eric Jones won. He, on the last lap, got a push from Denny Hamlin, who was actually a lap down, by the way. He was involved in a wreck a little bit before that. Talk about that here in a minute. But he passed Ryan Newman and Austin Dillon on the backstretch, 3 wide on the outside, and won the race. There was only 5 cars left on the track when the checkered flag flew. And just an absolutely crazy race. I'm going to talk about that. Of course, also going to go over Daytona 500 qualifying. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is on the pole for the Daytona 500 in the number 47 JTG Doherty racing car. And on the outside of the front row is Alex Bowman in the Hendrick Motorsports number 88. Talk about that and some other news. But, of course, everybody is probably coming to this video to hear about the Clash. So, my initial thoughts on this race were, besides the fact that it was absolute madness, I believe what you saw in today's race is going to be, you're going to see a lot of what you saw in this race next Sunday. And not necessarily the 60 laps of single file racing that we saw and fuel strategy. I don't believe you're going to see a lot of that, although I won't rule it out because, in fact, if you watch the FS1 pre-race show, Larry McReynolds said, I don't believe you're going to see any single-file racing in this race today, and immediately the race started, there was single-file racing, but I actually thought that was kind of funny. But I do believe, however, you're going to see a lot of what you saw in the last 15 laps next Sunday, which are wrecks. And I'll tell you why. I mean, not just the fact that this race was madness, but if you look back at the last 3 Daytona 500s, I mean, they've just been wreck fests. And the 2017 Daytona 500 had 8 caution flags. The 2018 Daytona 500 had 8 caution flags. The 2019, last year's 500, I'm not sure how many cautions. I believe it was actually more than that. But I know for certain they had, I think, 2 red flags. And it was just a crazy race. So, nonetheless, I think you're going to see a lot of that come next Sunday. So my overall thoughts are, although I do think you're going to see a lot of what you saw Sunday, what you saw today, next Sunday, as far as figuring out who has the best cars and everything like that, I have no idea. I have no answer on, like, who has an edge this weekend. It's very hard to tell. And, I mean, overall, I thought Martin Truex Jr. looked pretty good. And he made an early move in the race to get out front. I knew he had some trash on the grill, so he had to drop back. But he looked good early on. Obviously, Keselowski led a lot of the laps. But like I mentioned, up until like 15 laps to go, the field was single file and in 2 distinct packs when the pit strategy was going on. So, I mean, it's very hard to tell. The Haas cars, I liked what I saw from them. Obviously, Boyer and Harvick, they were up there behind Brad. And I thought, well, you know, if this race were to go green until the end, you know, I would believe that, you know, Boyer and Harvick would try to work together to get past Brad. But obviously, the race did not stay under green. And it was pretty much just madness. And so, I mean, we didn't see too much from the Chevrolets because they were trying to work pit strategy. They were trying to stay out. They were trying to conserve fuel. And, even before that, they really weren't up there battling for the lead or anything like that. They were kind of mired back in traffic. So it's very difficult to say from this race who has an edge this week. And granted, I understand they have different cars for the 500. They have different setups possibly, but at the same time, it is something to look at. So I thought Truex looked good. I thought Brad Keselowski looked good. Denny Hamlin working his way from the back, trying to make some moves. So, yeah, I would definitely give the edge to those three guys this weekend. But I'll go ahead and go over the race here. Take it. I'll just get you through the key points. So obviously, Ryan Newman started on the pole. It was, of course, the random draw-in to see who would start up front. He started up front, and Truex took the lead early, and he would lead the first 8 or 9 laps or so, and then he dropped back because, as I mentioned, he had trash on his grill, a usual restrictor plate issue, and dropped back, got the the trash off, and that gave Brad Keselowski the lead, and up until the segment caution. So this race, of course, was a 25-lap first segment and then a 50-lap final segment. And the leaders pitted on lap 25 right before the caution came out. 8 cars stayed out. Newman took the lead. And then when the caution came out, Newman and the other cars who didn't pit came back in. So that gave the lead back to Keselowski. And he and Hamlin and Jones were the top 3 for the restart. And then a lap after the restart, Hamlin would actually pass Brad, but then Brad would take the lead back. He led the outside. Hamlin led the inside. And they would pretty much single file out for the remainder of the race up until about 10 laps to go. And even before that, when I was mentioning what was going on with Truex and Brad, those guys were single file line. They were up against the wall. Pretty much everything you can expect. And so with 30 laps to go, these guys tried some pit strategy. So the story of this race was, at this point, Alex Bowman, Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, and some others were hanging back. They were back in a second pack. There were 2 distinct packs, and they were hanging back, trying to save fuel. They were running the bottom of the racetrack to try and save gas. And Kyle Busch, Truex, Blaney, and others hit the pits with 30 to go. And Keselowski, Boyer, and Harvick, they stayed out, but then they pitted the next lap, and which gave the Chevys the lead. So at this point, the Chevys are now up front, and they're trying to save gas. Not only the Chevys, but Joey Logano was in there too, and they're doing their best to save fuel. And I mean, all the reporters are saying, well, they're probably not going to make it, but they were trying everything they could. And the other problem for them is that lead pack, after they came into the pits, they got together and they were coming. I mean, they were moving up through the draft, and they were catching them. And in fact, I think they were ahead of each other by they were catching them by like a second and a half. They were like a second and a half faster, and they were on the move. And then they finally caught them with about 13, 12 laps to go. And then, so Logano was actually still in the lead at this point, and he's trying to fend these guys off. And for the most part, he was doing a decent job, but it was only a matter of time. And Kyle Busch came up through the middle at one point. They're working their way through turns 3 and 4. Joey Logano just blocking all over the place. He's blocking left, he's blocking right. And Kyle goes to the outside into 4, tries to make a move, comes back down to the bottom. Hamlin's to his inside. He can't go further down the track, and so he and Logano collide, and they wreck. And it took Kyle Busch, Joey Logano up into the wall, collected Keselowski, and the caution came out. So that was the first major incident. with about 10 laps to go. And see, initially I thought, like, great job, Joey. Like, just tried to wreck the entire field. You weren't even going to make it on fuel, and you took out 2 other cars. And when I looked at it again, I was like, you know what? It looked like Kyle got into him. And, well, if you hear Kyle Busch's interview, he absolutely got into him. He pretty much, well, I mean, he didn't, I don't think he didn't, like, admit that he hit him, but he just knew that, Logano had kept blocking him, so he was pretty much sick of it. And, I mean, he basically mentioned, he tried to get back to the inside of him, and there wasn't too much room, and they kind of just came together. But, I mean, Logano was putting a lot of blocking on Kyle, and that's pretty much what happened. So, to me, it was kind of just a racing incident. It was 2 guys fighting for the same piece of real estate, and, I mean, that's what happened. But Logano was putting on some wicked blocks there, and initially I thought, my goodness, I mean, he cut right across his nose and just wrecked him. But, yeah, and so that also collected Keselowski. Keselowski was furious after the wreck. He threw his hands up. He was slamming the side of the ambulance when he was going to the infield care center. I mean, he was really mad. So then, obviously, they had cleanup after that wreck, and so they restarted with 3 to go, and I have no idea what happened here. So William Byron is lined up on row 2 on the outside, Newman's lined up on row 3 on the outside, and they both, to me, it looked like they spun their tires, but I don't know. I'm not even going to speculate on this. I have no idea what happened. My guess is they spun their tires, but both of them slid and piled in to the field. Truex was collected. A bunch of other cars were collected in this. Just a huge wreck. Right here on the front straightaway, as they were taking the green, this happened. And, I mean, if you listen to Newman's radio, he thought there was oil on the racetrack, which could have been a factor. I have no idea. At least that's what Newman thinks. So perhaps it was, but I mean, initially I thought, man, they spun the tires, but it could have been an oil leak on the racetrack from that prior wreck, which really surprises me because, as I mentioned, that wreck was with, I think, 10 to go, and they restarted with 3 to go. So you would think they would have enough time to make sure the racetrack was cleaned up before they went back green, but apparently not. So there you go. So a bunch of other cars were taken out at this point, and Hamlin was up front on this next restart with 2 to go. My pick for this race, by the way. So they restart, and Chase Elliott is right behind him on the outside. Hamlin chose the outside for the restart. Almirola was on the bottom, and Hamlin got a huge push from Chase Elliott. I mean, Chase Elliott is just shoving Hamlin down the backstretch, and Hamlin was getting really loose, and I thought, my goodness, Chase is pushing him really hard. And then they go into turn 3. Hamlin has a big lead, and then he just spins out. He had no help from Chase. He goes into 3, and he just loses the back end of the car and piles into the field. Chase avoided it, as well as Austin Dillon and a few others. And I mean a few others, because there wasn't too many that missed this. Jimmy Johnson was collected. Clint Boyer was collected. A lot of others. And I'm not sure what happened. And I tried to rewind Hamlin's post-race interview. He didn't say anything about what happened in that incident in his post-race interview. And I tried to rewind to see what his crew chief had said, but I couldn't. Unfortunately, it just wouldn't let me rewind that far. But anyway, I tried to figure out what happened. I couldn't, but I do know that his crew chief said that there was some sort of problem, and he was surprised that he hung on to it. So, I mean, who knows? But I guess the point of this is it wasn't Chase Elliott's fault that Hamlin got wrecked going into turn 3. He had some sort of issue, and spun up in front of the pack. So that was the deal there. So that was the third big wreck. And at this point, there were like 7 or 8 cars left on the track. So then they had another overtime restart. Chase Elliott actually came into pit. He was the leader at the time, but he had damage, so he came back in. And so they have another restart. And it's Austin Dillon and Kyle Larson up front. And Larson gets out to the lead. And Chase Elliott, who I mentioned he pitted, yeah, he was back up to 4th because there was only, I think, 7 cars on the track at the time. Whoever was behind him pitted as well. But he was still up there fighting for the win, even though he had damage. And they went into turn 3. Larson was up against the wall, so was Chase. Chase was pushing him into the corner. And they got clear. And so into turn 3, Chase dove underneath Larson. Larson went to block. They both collided. They both wrecked. They collected Eric Jones, your eventual winner, by the way. And another wreck ensues. Man, I mean, I don't even know what to say at this point because this race was just, it was melee, and I'm speechless. So, I mean, basically Chase was trying to get underneath Larson. Larson made an aggressive move trying to block, and they just both collided. So that was the deal there, and so pretty much at this point, and by the way, Larson ended up continuing. Chase Elliott did not. Eric Jones ended up continuing, obviously. So at this point, there are 6 cars left on the track. It's Austin Dillon, Ryan Newman, Clint Boyer, Denny Hamlin, Eric Jones, and Kyle Larson. So here we go. The final restart. It's Dillon and Newman. And Newman kind of breaks away a little bit. Then Dillon passes him. And they come around. They finally get the white flag this time. So the race is finally going to end after all this chaos. And Newman passes Dillon. And it looks like Newman's out there a good ways. Looks like he's going to win. And then you see Hamlin and Jones hook up going into turn 1. And they're hooked up. Hamlin is shoving Jones. Jones is rocketing on the outside. Dillon, though, gets a run down the backstretch. He dove underneath Newman. This allowed Jones to propel past both of them. And then, of course, Hamlin, he was a lap down. So at this point, Jones was home free, and he won the Clash with a destroyed race car. The entire front end was just garbage. I mean, it was just torn apart. And Eric Jones won the Clash. Unbelievable. I mean, you see these super speedway races and just the chaos that they've been. I mean, last year, for one, we had a lot of crazy restrictor plate races. The Daytona 500, for one. I don't know why I'm calling them restrictor plate races. I know they don't have restrictor plates anymore, but I meant super speedway, so I apologize. But anyway, they're crazy races, and I don't even know what to say. It's unbelievable. And especially after that first 60 laps when they were just single file, I thought, well, this is what we're going to get until probably the last lap, and then these guys are going to go for it. And chances are whoever's leading is going to win anyway. But that was definitely not the case here. So Eric Jones was your winner with a demolished race car. So that was the Clash, everybody. Chaos. That's all I can say. It was absolutely chaos. One of the craziest races I've ever seen, and man, if this is any sign of what's to come in 2020, I mean, we've got a big year coming up. So, but I definitely believe it's what to come this Sunday, because I mean, after watching this race, when you get 40 of them out there and they're going at it, it's going to be chaos. So there you go. That is the Clash at Daytona. And time for me now to get into Daytona 500 qualifying. So as I mentioned, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got the pole for the Daytona 500. Alex Bowman will start on the outside of the front row. And if you watched it, I mean, Stenhouse blew these guys out of the water. I mean, these guys weren't even close to Stenhouse's times. But the big story of qualifying was some guys were set up to try and go get the pole. They had, they were in qualifying trim, and other guys were just getting ready for the duels. And so I suppose they were in race trim. Now, what does that mean? Well, what that means is, not necessarily these times exactly mean too much, besides the fact that, Stenhouse has got a rocket ship. His car was very fast. Alex Bowman looked good. All the Hendrick cars really look good. You have all four of them inside the top 10. Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch looked fast. Christopher Bell looked good. So I think the big indicator is obviously going to be the duel race when they get out there in the pack. And to a degree, we really don't know what to expect as far as who's going to be good, who's going to be fast, because when you're out there in the duels on Thursday night, the Daytona 500 is a day race. Granted, it ends at nighttime, but for the most part of that race, it's a day race. So it's going to be a lot different than running at night. So it'll be very interesting to see. But I like what I see from the Hendrick cars. I like what I see from the Toyotas. They're looking strong. And so, yeah, looking forward to the duels on Thursday. So, yeah, any other things I want to talk about from qualifying? Oh, so if you watched it, like I said, Stenhouse was an absolute rocket ship. And, they would show this thing, Fox would have a 3D graphic up at the top right of the screen to kind of show where the person qualifying is at and where the pole sitter was at. For example, if, say, Chase Elliott was on his lap, they would show kind of a 3D graphic of Chase Elliott's car, and it would be obviously going around the track, and they would show where Stenhouse's car was. And, of course, Chase was behind Stenhouse, so you would see Chase Elliott following Ricky Stenhouse's car. So I kind of liked that, and I kind of didn't. I thought it was kind of cool to kind of see where would they be if they were just out there. But at the same time, it kind of was distracting. So just a little nitpick there. But yeah, so like I said, Daytona 500 qualifying, obviously take it with a grain of salt because, listen, after what we saw today, who knows who's going to win this Daytona 500? I have absolutely no idea. I'll definitely have to watch the duels on Thursday to kind of see who's fast in the draft and who's not. But, as far as these times, they absolutely, sure, they mean a lot, but to me, they're not going to mean anything if you can't avoid the wrecks. That's all I can say. So, we'll see what happens. And I'm going to get to that more here in a bit when I talk about the duel races. But there was also some news on Kevin Harvick this week. He has signed a 2-year extension with Stewart-Haas Racing, which puts him through 2023 with the organization. And this actually was a surprise to me because I thought for certain that Harvick was going to be retired after 2021. I thought for sure, his contract runs out, and I thought for certain that he was going to be gone, and apparently not. Apparently he wants to keep going through 2023, and yeah, we'll see. Harvick continues to stay competitive. The reason I thought he was going to retire it was because, he's 44 now. He's going to be 45 in December. And so 2021, obviously next year, puts him at 46. And that's kind of, the past few guys to retire. You look at Jeff Gordon. He was 44 when he retired. Tony Stewart, I believe, was 45. Dale Jr., I think, was 42, 43. So, to me, I kind of figured, just based on those trends, that, Kevin Harvick is probably gonna retire after then. But hey, he's he's not any of those guys, so it looks like he wants to stay in, and I mean, rightfully so. Like I said, Kevin Harvick continuing to stay competitive. I mean, he was just in the Championship 4. In fact, the past 3 seasons he's been in the Championship 4, and in fact, in 2018, he had 8 wins, a career high. So Kevin Harvick still getting after it, and at least 2 more years with Kevin Harvick behind the wheel. Also, other news, I just wanted to briefly mention this, but if you didn't see practice yesterday, Brad Keselowski, he was exiting the garage, and he was going to come out on the racetrack, and he somehow, just by accident, tagged the fence exiting the garage and to come out on the pit lane. There's actually video of it on YouTube. I guess if you just YouTube search Brad Keselowski hits fence, I'm sure everybody's seen it by now, but a freak accident, and I thought it was funny. He said he took full blame for what happened, and it's like, of course you did. But, luckily for Brad, though, the car is repaired, and it looks like he is good to go for Daytona, so it looks like he won't have to go to a backup car, at least for that scenario. Hopefully, that is, of course, if he doesn't get in a wreck in the duels, which, after today, I mean, anything's possible. So, there you go. So, the duels preview. Of course, we have the 2 duels Thursday night starting at 7. Duel 1 starts at 7. Duel 2 is immediately after. And as I mentioned, it's going to be interesting to see what these guys do when they get out there in the pack. I do, however, expect single file racing, mainly because, I mean, for one, that's usually what we see in the duels anyway. These guys, they don't really try to go after it in these duels because, obviously, they're trying to protect their Daytona 500 car, and so they're not going to be, ruffling feathers in a race like this to where they would have to go to a backup car. So I don't expect, I certainly do not expect what we saw today, but, at the same time, I could have, I would have came on here and told you were crazy if you would have told me what would have happened in today's race. I mean, today's race was just chaotic. But I don't expect it this Thursday. And so for Duel 1, I'm going to go with Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott is in Duel 1. And by the way, if you want to see the starting lineup for the duels, you just, of course, go to NASCAR.com, check the qualifying, and the odd number spots are the lineup for Duel 1, and the even number spots are the lineup for Duel 2. So I'm going to go with Chase Elliott for Duel 1. He is a 2-time duel winner, and I'm sure he's probably mad at himself right now for what happened in today's race. I'm sure he's going to want to get some vengeance on what happened, and so I think Chase is going to win the first duel. As far as the second duel goes, it's kind of hard to say. Let's see here. I actually have to go through because I haven't looked at the qualifying order much, but let's see. I was definitely leaning towards Kyle Busch, the fact that Kyle was in there, but just kind of looking at these guys now. Eric Jones is part of Duel 2. Kevin Harvick's a part of Duel 2. So, I mean, some good restrictor plate racers in there. Kyle Larson's also in there. Kurt Busch. So, yeah, I believe for Duel 2, I'm probably going to go with Kyle. I think Kyle's going to win Duel 2. And so he's going to get the 4th starting spot for the Daytona 500. Chase would be 3rd if he wins his. So, there you go. That is my Busch Clash review and my duel preview. I'll be back on Friday to talk about the Daytona 500 coming up next Sunday, everybody. Hey, everybody, follow me on Instagram at NASCAR Images. Follow my main account at JohnBreeden9. Twitter at John_R_Breeden. And that is it, everybody. Talk to you later.